what's going on, everybody? So this is my review for the Resident Evil 2 Remake. Now, just a little background. This review is coming from someone who has played and beaten all the mainline Resident Evil games besides Resident Evil 6, which most of us don't even count because we all agree that game was complete garbage. I also never played Code Veronica either, but all the rest of the games, I did play them, and I honestly did enjoy them, even though some of them strayed off of the path of what the earlier games was. I still enjoyed them for what they were. So on to the review. Resident Evil 2 takes place 2 months after the events of the first game. It's set in Raccoon City, a community that was turned into zombies by the T-Virus, which was developed by a pharmaceutical company, as we know, as Umbrella. You play as Leon Kennedy on his first and technically last day as a Raccoon City police officer, and Claire Redfield, who is Chris Redfield's conveniently well-trained and capable sister. I mean, if Chris can punch boulders, we really shouldn't be surprised by what anybody who shares his bloodline can do. I expect everyone to know the basics of the story of Resident Evil 2, but this was just for those who actually may have never played the original and never heard the story somehow 20 years later. But I gotta say, reliving the stories of the Resident Evil games shows a lot of humble beginnings with Capcom, and it shows a lot of potential and how some of the latter games really strayed from what was really a genius plot. Not anything original, but they took an unoriginal plot and really expanded on it and made it this great Resident Evil universe. And games like 5, 6, and 7, even though I enjoyed 5 and 7, they really strayed from what the originals were. And in my opinion, this game created the foundation and the origin of what turned out to be one of the most legendary and iconic characters still in gaming. I doubt Capcom knew what Leon Kennedy and the story of the Resident Evil franchise would evolve into, but that just gives more credit to the first games and how pivotal the story was. In this remake, slight changes and additions were made, to close up some plot holes and fix some logical errors, even though I still find there are some inconsistencies regarding the timeline when you play as Leon A or Claire B or vice versa. The voice acting is great, but the script is still kind of cheesy, which is understandable because they tried to stay loyal to some of the 1998 dialogue. Playing from Leon, Claire, and a few other perspectives, which I won't spoil, helped the story feel well-rounded and complete. Whoever's path you choose to play as second, in my opinion, will probably be the path you enjoy a little less, because even though several parts of the scenario and the gameplay will be different, a good amount of it is the same. The free Survivors DLC, which is coming out, will also further the, and deepen the lore around these events. 20 years later, I think was the right time for this remake because of, visual, gameplay, and overall technological advancements to help present the story to a new and old audience. So fixed camera angles, area transitions, and a few other antiquated mechanics are gone for obvious reasons, even though I did hear a rumor about a feature bringing back the fixed camera angles if you beat the game, but I don't think that turned out to be true, or if it'll come in the future. I don't know. But now it plays more like Resident Evil 4 with the early Resident Evil games survival aspect. One thing we learned, or newer gamers learned, is that this is a true survival horror game, right? We learned that the new gamers were surprised by that. You are not supposed to kill every zombie you see. This is not a shooter. Zombies are bullet sponges for a reason. This game is about resource management and making wise decisions on when it is worth it to use items in your inventory and when to engage in combat. Even though engaging in combat should be a second thought, being more liberal with ammo is a little bit more okay in the second half of the game if you were very reserved in the first half, because now you have a lot more resources to expend, so it's okay. The controls are smooth and responsive, which makes, the combat very enjoyable. Both characters get their own unique weapons to, differentiate the experience. The variety of enemy types, like, the lickers and the dogs, which are extremely annoying because of their movement, and a few others, keep you on your toes and help the game to feel a little bit more dynamic. The boss fights are very simple in design, but I personally, still enjoy them. The game, even on its hardest difficulty, provides you with more than enough to get through the game, but not if you're trying to kill every zombie just because it's there. Mr. X's purpose is to be intimidating and make runs to the item boxes more challenging, which you will have to do if you want to get all the resources that the game offers you. Because early on, when you don't have all the inventory pouches, which you collect throughout the game by doing certain tasks, you'll have to make inventory runs to get things and put them in the box, which you will need for later. This game on the hardest difficulty is more like the original game on the normal difficulty, because you need ink ribbons, and games have overall become more easy, even though some gamers still find a way to complain, I guess because they weren't gamers back then. But that's neither here nor there. This is not judgment, this is a review. Now, the game does a lot of things to actually make this experience much easier, especially for newer players other than the difficulty. Like having one of the most useful maps I've ever seen in gaming. So when you come across an item, and whether or not you pick it up because you don't have enough space or you didn't notice it, it gets marked on your map so you can know exactly where to go back and get it. Also, if there are items you have not yet retrieved in an area, it remains red in your map, and then after you retrieved everything from that area, it turns blue on your map. In your inventory, which can be increased by finding more pouches, as I mentioned before, anytime you have completely exhausted the use for an item, an X is put over the item so you don't have to carry it around unnecessarily, wondering if you're going to need it again. So accessing areas, retrieving items, solving puzzles, and unlocking safes is all a chain reaction in this game. You have to do one task, which leads you to another area, which leads you to another item, which then helps you solve a puzzle that gives you an item to access somewhere else. And the game just continues progressing in that circular loop. Because some people apparently get a little bit overwhelmed when they see all of the things they don't have, and they are not completely sure on how to get them. But it's pretty much just starting from step one, and then more and more becomes unlocked for you if you follow all the clues and all the hints. I really like that some items in this game can be used offensively and defensively, which also affects your thoughts when it comes to using them. Because, for example, grenades, flashbangs, and knives can be used to attack enemies, but it also can be used as a defensive maneuver when you get grabbed, so that you can get enemies off of you. This Resident Evil 2 Remake is a very well optimized game on PC. At 1440p high settings, I was able to maintain above 80 frames, and the only time I incurred like a severe frame rate dip was early on in the game at the gas station during like the gameplay cutscene. I'm not gonna lie, usually when I first boot up a game and it tells you to calibrate the lighting properly, I usually ignore it. But for the right creepy, scary, and uneasy atmosphere that this game offers, it's imperative that you abide by the recommendations. Now, me personally, I turned off motion blur, film grain, and lens distortion because I believe those are graphical abominations. But I'm glad the PC version has all the bells and whistles that you would expect. Lighting and shadows are obviously important in a game that aims to create the right ambiance and mood. The screen space reflections, or like the subsurface scattering, seems to create this like visual artifacting glitch on some of the walls and floors occasionally, but it wasn't like a big deal. But hopefully they patch that in the future. There's high quality, character models and shadows and environmental contact shadows, and I'm not gonna lie again, I've been shook once or twice by what turned out to be my own shadow or just like a piece of furniture. But that's not crazy, especially when you got Mr. X walking around. Everything with a shadow, you start to think is him just moving around. So I'm not crazy for that. You know, like I said, character designs and the textures are gorgeous. I don't like that there's like a tan or brownish filter or tint sometimes on the game. I'm not sure if I'm the only one that noticed that. And like the visual artifacting that I mentioned earlier, that it might have something to do with like the volumetric lighting or the particle lighting or even the ambient occlusion, especially in the main part of the police station. Yeah, the bloom and the lens flare really help the design and the scene outside of the early police station with all of the cars and the flashing lights to contrast the darkness and the weather effects. The game also has exemplary physics and bullet damage, which the rest of the industry should strive to have in their game because seeing the impact is very satisfying for gamers. Resident Evil 2 is the gold standard of remakes and linear gameplay and storytelling. It is probably the best game I've had to start off the year that I can remember for a long time. It's beautiful and it's an absolute must play and is worth the full price. In a time where gamers have been brainwashed to thinking that open world and 80-hour playtimes are inherently better, Resident Evil 2 takes us back to our roots and shows us that it's quality over quantity. Linear games and survival horror still have a welcome place in this industry. And the replayability makes up for the short playtime anyway. So I give Resident Evil 2 a 9.5 out of 10. I absolutely love this game. It's phenomenal and it's a must play. That is my review. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you hit the like button to support, and I will catch all of you later. Peace. Let me know what your thoughts are on Resident Evil 2 Remake in the comment section.